Light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. There are acquaintances that I met in high school. There are acquaintances I met in college, acquaintances I met in theological school, acquaintances I met when I lived in New York City, going to an acting school there. In each case, and I guess anytime you meet someone new, it's always this question of, so how do we define our relationship? Are we acquaintances? Are we family to one another? Are we friends? What does it mean to be a friend? And what if the friendship doesn't last? Certainly that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it in the first place. Friendship can be wonderful for a short time, or it may be a lifelong friendship. Either way, a friendship can still be wonderful. Not being a particularly long time doesn't make the moment less wonderful, but somehow we have to put all these pieces together into the totality of who we are and what we are, and making sense of the dynamics that influence and shape our lives. I suppose I've always been unusually self-aware, because it seems that I can remember places I've been, people I've talked with, and so forth, way more than lots of other people with whom I've spoken. Times when I've quoted conversations to people I knew in high school, and they don't remember ever having that conversation. And I have no reason to doubt my memory on that, and it's nothing particularly damaging one way or the other as far as that goes. It's just, remember when we were here and you said this and I said that, and they say, no, I don't remember. And I think at least a significant chunk of self-awareness is the ability to remember. Remembering all the ways we have been and all the ways we are becoming, and the same things about those around us, and putting it all together into some sort of community of, I suppose you might say, collaborative history. That for the time that I was in a particular place, I and the other people who were there were collaborating on the creation of a particular history, or rather of multiple particular histories, that each of us was having an experience within that time that was unique in some ways and yet significantly overlapped the experiences of those around us. In some ways it may have been a shared experience. All the people who wound up dealing with a particular challenge, be it cleaning up after a disaster, be it a particular parade in a small town, a particular celebration that was integrated into our education somehow, that if the school was celebrating a particular festival, or if the art department decided to have a showing of students' works in the hallways of the school. All sorts of different ways that collaboration happens, even when we're not particularly aware of collaboration happening. For my part, I guess I made a point of being aware of it. I suppose the first inspiration I encountered that pointed in that direction was reading the text of the play Our Town by Thornton Wilder, getting to the third act where Emily has now died and she's looking back at her life and astonished at how empty and superficial everything seems. And so she looks at the narrator and says something to the effect of, "Does anyone know they live while they do it?" And that has remained such a wonderful challenge to me for years since first reading that. Does anyone know they live while they do it? Or do we only get to look back and be aware of having lived? And so as I'm going through different experiences and as I'm meeting people and going new places and recognizing that it's going to be challenging, it's going to make me anxious, it's going to be difficult, at times it'll even feel overwhelming. And if I do it right, I won't have any regrets, because it will also be a time for allowing my definitions of myself to bend and expand, and allowing myself to try something I didn't think I could do. To allow myself to look at life, to look at spirituality, perhaps even to look at God from a perspective that I'd never before considered. When I was in college, I had a roommate for 3 semesters who was from mainland China. And he came from a Christian family. I grew up in a Roman Catholic family, and so I had noticed over time, however, that very often what Christians in America describe as Christianity is really nothing more than American culture. That somehow there's been a real confusion between what's American culture and what's Christianity. And so I wanted to hear from my roommate, who's from China, what is Christianity like without American culture? And so he got to tell me about Christianity when it was fused with Chinese culture. And I told him what Christianity was like when fused with American culture. And it seemed to me that that part, which was genuinely Christianity and not just cultural context, was what the two had in common. Which obviously wasn't near as much as what some people were assuming was Christianity, and what many people still think is Christianity. It's not that culture is bad, but it's kind of like mixing marbles into concrete. And you really can't tell how completely different from each other they are, as long as they're mixed. But at some point, trying to figure out, if you have green marbles and red marbles and you mix them both with concrete, what is concrete? Well, it has, one person might say it has red glassy specks in it. The other person says, no, it has green glassy specks in it. In order to figure out what is concrete, you have to take the marbles out, because marbles are not naturally part of concrete. But they can get mixed into concrete sometimes if somebody isn't careful to keep them separate. The idea being, if you're going to play with marbles on the sidewalk, wait until the concrete hardens first. But in any case, back to our topic. When I entered my college environment, well, even before that, when I went to an acting school in New York City, I found myself thrown into a group of 17 people in this acting class who were from all over the United States and actually from all over the world, because there was a girl in the class who was also from the Philippines. And what did we have in common? Well, we were all students at an acting school. But beyond that, it was such diversity. And in one sense, it was fascinating and wonderful. And in another sense, it was a little bewildering trying to figure out, so where's the foundation that we stand on to make this class work? And ultimately, what we had to learn was an adaptability and a flexibility. We had to learn also, I think, what it meant to be friends and to be supportive of each other. Because if we weren't supportive of each other, then, especially in an acting school, we couldn't work well together. And outside of acting schools, or any school for that matter, if people aren't willing to be friendly toward each other, it becomes extremely difficult for them to work together on any task whatsoever. I'm always a little bit amazed when, even yet, I still meet human resource directors for large companies who seem to have totally forgotten how important it is to know the personalities of each worker and to understand which personalities work well together and which personalities do not work well together. And for the sake of the community within that company and for the sake of the profitability of the company, putting people where they can do the most good and not putting them in such an arrangement that they get in each other's way. And there are probably 1,000 different comments similar to this that I could make within the show. What I'm trying to get back around to, I guess, is the need to occasionally step back, look at the bigger picture, and realize that it's not only about me, but it's not about excluding me. And it's not only about you, but it's not about excluding you. It's about something bigger than either one of us. Life is bigger than either one of us. And ultimately, the living of life is about the two of us finding whatever good we can do in whatever constructive ways our lives may overlap. And accepting, I suppose, that life is a very changing place with lots of transitions and lots of moving around. Even for those who have never left the small town in which I grew up, there's constant shifting going on. New buildings being built, new clubs being formed, old ones being dissolved because the members have all died off and there's no one left to maintain it. Churches that are now museums because everyone who was a member moved to another town. It's a slow sort of evolution that a town makes, or that a neighborhood makes within a larger city. And I guess parallels the slow sort of evolution that happens within each of our lives. In trying to come to terms with all of this, and wanting there to be someone upon whom I could rely, to recognize that I wanted a friend, but I wanted a true friend. I didn't want to pretend to have friends and not, and be lying to myself. And occasionally I would meet people that I thought were exactly what I was looking for. But in my own process of growth, I wasn't always ready for the combination of good and bad qualities that each person included. So sometimes it would work, sometimes it would be a friendship for a while, and then we would get to a point where there was just too much friction and headbutting to continue. And so in that moment to say, thank you, but for both our sakes we need to let go, wish each other well, and move on. And yet, even when we move on after disagreement, to recognize that this person contributed something good to my life too. Just because it wasn't always perfect didn't mean that, in some sense of the word, God didn't send this person to me to help shape and form me into a better person than I would have otherwise become. So, at this point, I'd like to share a song with you simply called I Call You My Friend. We've had good times together, it seems, yet some things are written in sand. We've shared all our dreams and our thoughts of tomorrow, rejoicing in what God has planned. Bittersweet times and bittersweet feelings, things that you helped me through. Bittersweet times and bittersweet feelings, times when I helped you too. Will we meet again? God be with you till then. And throughout all our journeys, my prayers are with you, and my heart's in your hand. And I call you my friend. I remember a time when we shared a burden, and together we made it through. But please pray for me wherever you go, and I'll be praying for you. In seasons of life, as in books made of paper, our lives can be recorded in truth. In spring and in summer, in autumn and winter, into age and through passing of youth. Will we meet again? God be with you till then. And throughout all our journeys, my prayers are with you, and my heart's in your hand. And I call you my friend. I watch as you go, then I turn to another, a person beside me in need, living my life in special devotion to healing through our memories. Bittersweet times and bittersweet feelings, longings that make my heart cry. But life with its wonder is laying before us, chances to sing and to fly. Will we meet again? God be with you till then. And throughout all our journeys, my prayers are with you, and my heart's in your hand. And I call you my friend. And I call you my friend. There were numerous times throughout my years in college when I sang this song with those I considered my friends at the time. The dark side of friendship, of course, is that sometimes friendship is betrayed. And none of those people are in my life anymore. It doesn't stop me from singing the song, and it doesn't stop me from believing the song. But it does make it clear that those who sang this song with me in the past were unwilling or unable, I'm not sure which, to sustain depth of friendship through the changing fortunes and circumstances of time. My roommate, who was from mainland China, was the one who pointed out to me that there was a wonderful echo on certain parts of the chorus. And the first few times the song was performed in public, he consented to actually sing with me and do the echo that within his creative mind as I was first performing the song for him. He was the first one to ever hear it. His conception of Christianity, however, did not allow for openly gay people to be creations of God also, and thus it is that I haven't heard from him since shortly after college, but definitely since the time that I discovered my own gayness. I think I knew it was different from the time it was 4, but it took me till I was 26 to figure out what it was, because being gay was so not talked about that there wasn't even really a vocabulary to say what it was I was feeling or how to respond to it. In the end, I found a certain integrity that convinced me that this was part of God's anomalous, unpredictable creation in me. That whether anybody else ever understood or not, being gay is part of who I am. Doesn't necessarily need to be the part of every introduction, but if it is relevant, it needs to be something that I don't hide. That curious, narrow line of being who and what you are without apology, but also without attitude. It's not about walking around with a chip on your shoulder, daring everyone to knock it off. Nor is it about apologizing for being different, for being an anomaly, for being unique, for having an entirely different way of looking at things or doing things than anyone else has. I suppose one could say it's about recognizing that the anomalies God has created within oneself are there for a reason. You know, God doesn't make mistakes. We are not accidents. We are not, the anomalies. When I finally decided to accept as truth that I am a gay man, rather than deciding to try and repress my own self, to try and censor my own voice, to try and suffocate my own soul. My decision was to live in truth and to be honest, regardless of what the cost of that honesty might be. That was my decision. I never decided to be gay, but I had to decide whether I would accept being gay, whether I would live, as I said, without apology and without attitude. That it wouldn't be about walking through life with a chip on my shoulder, daring anyone to knock it off. Make one nasty comment about being gay and I'll jump down your throat. I began to understand after a while that what people said was much more of a reflection of where they were than a reflection of what was true of me. What was true of me, that was something for God and I to decide. People who take sacred texts and use them to attack others, turning what is intended to be spiritually life-giving and turning it into something that is psychologically and emotionally wounding, is got to be one of the biggest tragedies of spirituality and of any sort of faithfulness. To be a faith-filled person, to be a person who has faith in oneself, faith in others, and faith in that which created the universe, that I belong here too. With all my uniqueness and whatever anomalies, I belong here too. It wasn't until I could say to myself and really feel the ring of truth that I'm gay and it's okay with God too. Until it was okay with God, I couldn't accept it in reference to myself. And the thing to, lots of people like to use the Bible, but the thing to remember about the Bible is that there is no mention in the Bible of any relationship of two same-gender persons, two men or two women, who form a relationship based on love. at best, it is just a complete silence. There are relationships in the Bible that seem like they could have been relationships of gay men or lesbians, but there's no confirmation. It's as if the whole subject was just not spoken about, but it's not provable or disprovable. Which leaves us back to saying, I am here, I am what I am, and it's up to me to put as much love and wisdom into it as I possibly can. So that when we call each other friends, when we call each other family, whatever word we use for each other, that it be something empowering, that it be just as much as God has given us the gift of life, this becomes our gift back to God and the world. All the ways that we can shine are the ways that God's presence becomes real to the world. Not in a narcissistic, self-centered way, but in a way that is the servant at the banquet, the servant at the Last Supper, when Jesus said, whoever wants to be greatest must be the servant of all. Being Sister Who is about serving others' personal and spiritual growth in any way I can. I simply choose to use theatrical devices and lots of symbols and metaphors.